thinking about our new topic of business economics. And we talked about this the other day, being business economics is a kind of like a subsection or a subtopic of all of economics, right? So there are aspects of it where if you do study business at any stage, then there are going to be some similarities, some language use, etc., some terms, some theories. All of that will be part of potentially what you might study if you studied business. Yeah. However, obviously, we are approaching it from an economics point of view, so sometimes it can be a bit different, right, with regards to that. Okay, now let's press on, because that's how you get the TV to work, looking at business economics. Now, very first thing, we need to make sure that with the previous terminologies that we've been using, that we are 100% familiar and comfortable with them, because we're going to need to refer to them in this topic as well. So the first one is this idea about factors of production, okay? We're talking about 4 groups, right, of factors of production, right, the elements used within the productive process. There were 4 of them. And what were they? So very first task, what are the factors of production? Come up with some examples. Ready, go. What were the 4 factors of production we looked at all the way at the start of the course? Close there, Abu. You're very close. You got 3 of them. And we've got the 4th. We need the 4th one as well. Four factors of production. Where are they? That's going a long way back in the notes. Good work, Emma. Well done. Land, labour, capital and enterprise is the absolutely right categories for factors of production that we were talking about. Oh, all that time ago. Land, natural resources. What have we got next one? You've got labour, the workers, the people, the human resources. Capital, the machinery used in the production process. And enterprise, or old-fashioned speak, entrepreneurship. The enterprise being the risk-taking managers, the people who bring all of those factors of production together and turn it into a business. And we know some entrepreneurs, right? Mum and dad might be an entrepreneur. So we were asked what those 4 were, so you can add those 4 in now. You know what they are, right? You've been reminded of them. But examples, remember to try and add real-life examples when you do these. So you've got the definitions and an example. You've got the term and an example. Right? So if it's land, it's a natural resource, then it could be eats grass in the field and goes moo. Three-letter word rhymes with owl. Three letters. There we go. Well done, Lishan. Probably more accurate to say producing goods and services as opposed to producing stuff. But yes, natural land, natural resources, so cows in the field eating the grass, sheep, obviously all the minerals, the trees, the wind, the water, right? Labour, people, us, the people who work, right? Capital, the machinery, the robots that build the cars, the drones that now apparently do deliveries for Amazon and the like. An enterprise, those risk-taking managers. So it might be the CEO of a company, right? Obviously, we said the other day Jeff Bezos has just stepped down as CEO, but it might be Tim Cook, CEO of Apple. You possibly classify him under that heading as an entrepreneur. And again, at the start of the course, one of the things that we said, funny angle today for some reason. One of the things that we said was that, maybe if I push this back a bit further, was that the entrepreneur, the enterprise was going to bring all of those together. So they were going to have to decide how much land and the type of land resource that they were going to need to use. They were going to have to decide how much labor to use. They're going to have to decide how much capital resources to use. They're going to have to put all of that together, what proportions, the types, the quality, all of that, to try and create a product that then will able to be sold and all of those other sorts of things. You know, earn them some profits potentially, which is what we say is the earnings, the reward for being an entrepreneur. So businesses are going to decide on the types of factors of production based on the type of good or service needing to be made. So if it's a type of good or service that needs a lot of land-based resources, then they might use that. If it's a type of good or service that you would need potentially a whole lot of capital goods to produce, then they'll use that. So the type of the good or service in and of itself is going to lend a lot to the decision about which resources and what proportion of resources that you might use. So if you're going to make a car, yeah, yes, you could possibly try and source all of the materials yourself and try and fit it all together, but I'm going to say that's going to take a wee while and you're going to need some pretty specialist skill sets to be able to do that. But if you have machines that are built, capital goods, that can assemble all of those different parts in the way that you want them, then yeah, you're going to have a car. So you're going to need to have a capital intensive production process potentially for making cars. Whereas if it's agriculture, right, producing palm oil, maybe, potentially more labor based than capital based. And that also is, they're also going to make that decision based on productivity. Now the word productivity you've probably heard before, right? People might talk about the idea of productivity with business. So the rate of output per input, how good the business is at doing their job, right? How many hats can they make per hour? How many hamburgers at McDonald's can they make per hour? Productivity. So if you find a machine that is more productive than a person, probably going to choose the machine. If you find a machine that's more productive than a person that's more productive than a machine, then you're probably going to choose the machine. Person, they're more productive. So productivity is something that we need to consider alongside the actual type of good or service. Now, there are other determinants as well. We're going to think about things like interest rates. We're going to talk about things like, so the actual cost themselves, the actual cost of the labor or the cost of the capital good, and interest rates, and confidence, business confidence. How confident are you that there's going to be enough sales in order for you to afford the investment in the capital good, all right? Now, we talk also about what's called intensity. Now, we've mentioned this, again, a long, long time ago. The idea that you could be devoting a greater proportion or percentage of your production process to a specific resource. So it might be, as we said, a capital-intensive resource or capital-intensive production process, like making a car. Might be a labor-intensive production process, like, for example, possibly palm oil, to use that example again. So that refers to the idea of intensity, is going to refer to the idea that you've got a greater proportion or greater percentage of one resource type over another in your production process. That's what that context is for that particular term. So we talk here about intensity with regards to car production, right? You typically employ more capital goods in proportion to all other resources, right? So we would explain that it is therefore more capital intensive, right? Now there are going to be businesses that are labor intensive. There are, okay? You think about industries where it is more physical, more hands-on. You're probably going to see more people doing those jobs than machines. I'm not saying that will always be the case, they are developing some very clever robotics technology, and we've seen some, right? Some of the robots in the warehouses that move all the products around, some drone delivery systems as opposed to people. So there are movements, right, where there will be possibly more robots doing it than people. If you haven't seen, please do look at some of the new robots that they're creating for business, okay? The Atlas robot, right? Boston Dynamics, the Atlas robot, you might have heard of. A little bit scary in some regards, but they've taught this robot how to put walls up in a building. Right? They've taught this robot how to carry heavy things over distances. They've got basically almost like robot horses now, Boston Dynamics. And you're able to put a whole lot of heavy goods on it as like a horse, a pack horse, you used to say. And then if you were, on a uneven trail that you couldn't get a car in, then maybe the robot horse would be the way to do it. Yeah, there's lots of those sorts of applications that are currently being developed, like little robot spiders that climb up windows to fix things or find things. Little robots that search through. There's a robot. Is it a snake that they're developing, and it's going to crawl through rubble to try and find people who've gotten trapped after, say, an earthquake. All of these sorts of ideas now, because of the cost and the technology, they are becoming more productive, potentially cheaper to make, and therefore maybe they will be chosen instead of the labor resource. Right? Now, your next task, here it is. Fill in the gaps. Away you go. Got about 30 odd seconds. Right, how are we getting on with that? Now, the answers to that one, this one. Businesses decide on the types of factors of production, so FOP for factors of production, based on the type of a good or service to be made, the productivity of the factors and their costs. Intensity refers to the proportion or percentage, if you will, of one factor that the business employs in comparison to another. I.e., in car production, a business typically employs more capital goods in proportion to all other resources, so we would explain it as more capital intensive. Good work, team. We also need to understand this, and this is a challenge for all businesses and the entrepreneurs who run them, is that those resources, they're going to substitute for each other. All right, so yes, it's the idea of intensity, yes. All right, but it is entirely possible that we're going to have resources that are able to swap in for other resources. Okay? It may not be completely the labor for capital, but it might be different labor. Okay, or different types of capital goods. And it will then depend on the actual productivity or the cost of them with regards to whether they are then employed or not. Yeah. So you're still thinking cost, you're still thinking, maybe it's an investment, so you need a loan, so therefore possibly there's an interest cost added as well. And you're also still thinking about productivity. All of that wrapped up in the idea here that you're going to substitute one resource potentially for another. Because some businesses you can't, right? There are going to be some businesses where, given the current technology at any rate, you can't substitute one resource for another, okay? Maybe in the future. Now, if we think about this, are there businesses that actually have done this, that have actually changed their production process? And there are a few that were 100% labor-based, possibly, and now are more capital-based. So those businesses that you are thinking about, that you have got in your case studies that you're developing, how intense capital-wise are they? Are they more capital-based, capital goods-based, or are they more labor-based? Right? So if we're thinking a retail business, then it's potentially going to be more labor-intensive than it is capital intensive. But if you're thinking along the lines of a different company, one that produces cars, for example, then you're going to be thinking, well, it is more capital production based. But historically, as we know, right, you look back in history, they used to make cars by hand. Now it's generally speaking all robots doing it. Yeah. There are still some car manufacturers who actually make cars by hand. And if you haven't heard of the company that produces Bugattis, right, those cars are actually built still by hand. Right? They're very specialized. They're some of the fastest cars in the world, right? And they are built by hand. They use lifts and machines to lift the things, but they actually use people to put them all together. So they're very labor intensive. They're also very expensive as a result of that. Now, what happens if the cost of labor was to rise? What would happen? What decision are businesses more likely to make if the cost of labor was to rise? About 30 seconds, go. Here we go, Nicham. Hello. Work. Well done, Jean. On the rest of you, have a go. Good work, on. Well done. Well, Lancelot, have a go. On Kane and Brandon, you can do it. You still there? Yes, absolutely right, Abu. Well done. Brandon, can you have a go? Lancelot, have a go, please. Yes, you're right, Emma.
Mr. David?
Yeah.
But it's not like demand and supply, right? That's the way. So basically, they don't have the same relationship as like supply and demand. They just, right? Or is it?
I'm a bit confused as to what you're asking there, dude. There is going to be demand for the resource, yes, based on demand for the product as well. It's derived demand.
I mean, like, would we have like a what's it called, a PFF graph that would show that would illustrate that change in cost of labor and capital? Would that, how would the relationship be? Or is it just?
Yeah, you could probably do that. That might be a bit more advanced than what you need for IGCSE, but essentially you'd have a supply and demand graph, right, where you would illustrate the costs of one resource decreasing. So I think that's what we said. No, costs rising. So the supply curve would shift to the left, okay, of that particular product or resource in this case. So therefore, the price of that resource is more expensive. So then if you were then to translate that understanding, as you're pointing out, to a PPF diagram, then yes, you'd see them shifting from one resource choice to another resource choice within the PPC. So that's a little bit more advanced than what you need.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Yes, well done. Okay. Now, we've made a big assumption here that you actually can change the factors of production, but that's not always the case. Yeah, people might be on employment contracts. Well, how do you decrease the labour to increase the capital? If that on an employment, you have to wait till the contract is finished, and then so there might be a time lag with that. How do you employ more labour? Right, they might not be able to find the labour that you need. Right, specific skills, etc., that you might need. Yeah? So, or the machinery, it might again be too expensive, or it might not be possible to bring it to where your business is. Yeah. So there's lots of those assumptions that we're making, and so firms may not be able to easily change some of their factors of production. Right. Some of them might be able to change in what we call the short term. You might be able to make a quick adjustment. Okay. So say, for example, you've got some labour and you need more labour to manufacture hats and less labour to manufacture socks within your company. So transfer the resources to them. Yeah? That's possible within the short term. But in the slightly longer term, you can change pretty much everything. You want a new factory built, done, right? Because it's not the immediate time frame that you're looking at. If somebody wants to open a new shop, it takes a while to be able to do that. Even here, right? I guess you can set your shop up on the side of the road, but you still need a certain amount of time, perhaps permissions, maybe. You need to get your product sorted and how are you going to sell it. So you can't do things right in the immediate time. There's some things you can do immediately, very short-term based. Other things are going to take longer. So if you are making changes to the factors of production in your business, one of the hurdles that you have to get over is the idea of time. Sometimes your resources are going to be very fixed based on a period of time. But as you push that period of time forward into the future, all of a sudden it's not fixed anymore. Yeah? So you might want to, as said, build a new factory. Well, that's going to take time. But if you've got that time, might take a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, however long, all of a sudden you've reached that point where you've now got a new factory. But the immediate short term, can't build a new factory like that. It's going to take some time. Okay? So factory size, you're only able potentially to change in the long run. Might be easier to change labor, right, than any other resource. But you still have to take into account labor, job, contracts, right? So yes, you can move labor around, you can add more labor in, you can maybe let some labor go, right? Hopefully not too much, okay? But you still have to take into account that these are people and they are working and they have a contract perhaps with you that says they need to be employed, right? So you do have to take all of that into account. So the takeaway here is that it isn't easy to instantly change your factors of production, that you are going to need to take time to change some. Some are going to be relatively easy to change or easier to change quite quickly, like labor is easier than the capital goods. Why might it be difficult for some businesses to change their factors of production? You've got about 30 odd seconds. Ready, go. Have a go. Why do you think it's difficult for some businesses to change their factors of production? Have a go, team. Here we go. Well done, Emma. Yes, you're absolutely right. Well done, Lishan. That's very good. A very good explanation. Yes, Harshni, you're right, because of contracts, that can be an issue. Wait a couple more seconds for everybody else. Work, Lancelot. Yes, that's true. Okay. Okay. All right. Good thinking, team. And now your next task is a productivity challenge. So remember our idea about productivity, how well you're going to do something, but it's about what's called output per input. So it's how well you're able to do a task in either a set period of time or based on the amount of units of input that you put in, right? So how many hamburgers per workers or how many hamburgers per time. Both of those are productivity ratios. So we're going to have a wee productivity challenge. And this is for you. Now, it's not complicated. Okay. Will require you to use your computer as a little bit graphical. Okay. You're going to have to draw fast. Okay. You're going to have a very limited period of time to do some drawing in your little drawing box that's going to appear soon. Okay. And then we're going to see how productive you will work. So that's what you're going to do. Right. Ready, set. So what you're going to do is you're going to be drawing as many stick figures as you can in your little window. All right. Using your finger, I guess, on the trackpads or your pencil if you've got an iPad. Right. So using the drawing box that you've got on your screen, you're going to be drawing as many stick figures as you can. And we're going to see how many you can do in just 15 seconds. All right, ready? Here's the 15-second little countdown. So you're going to try. Let's see how productive you all are. Ready, set, go. Hold on. Go. 3, 2, 1. Go. Right, 15 seconds on the clock. Drawing. Come on, let's do some drawing. Down to 9 seconds. Come on, drawing. Stick figure people. 4 seconds. We've got a lot of time. You're going to do some drawing. Time's up. How productive were we? Drawing stick figures. Resubmit them. Here we go. Let's see. Abu, you writing in Mandarin? Brandon? Okay. World's smallest stick figures. Oh, look at Li Shan. That's very good. Li Shan got 3. Irina, you got 2 and 1 that looks like, yeah, 2.5, maybe almost 3. So 3 seems to be the most number we can get done in 15 seconds. Abu, you got a couple of bodies. Close there. Very good. Well done, team. So that's the idea of productivity. It's about how much output or production or product you can make in a set period of time, right? So how many hamburgers per hour? How many hamburgers per minute, right? Or in this case, how many stick figures per 15 seconds? I put 15 seconds to give you a bit of stress, and if you're having a go and having a bit of a race at it, that's the idea. Now, when I've done this in the past, you'd do it in class, you'd be making something, right? And we'd time you and see how many you made. We'd do a little bit of a quality control and say, well, I don't know that they're as good perhaps as these ones, perhaps, yeah? You did some dots there, Brandon. Dots, stick figures, yeah? All right. Now, as we said, the demand for capital goods. So if we are wanting to substitute from labor to capital, so if we figure out that the price of capital goods has decreased, then it makes sense to consider increasing our demand for capital goods, to substituting some of our resources into capital. If the price of other factors of production, what about if they change? So if the price of labor increases, then as you correctly pointed out before, you might substitute to capital goods. And here, if the profit levels, if you're earning a lot of money from your business, now some businesses earn a huge amount of money. They really do. You think about some of those apps, right? Once you've made an app, okay, put it into the app store. I don't know if any of you have made apps, I'm not sure. But you make an app, you put it in the app store. Once you've made it, that's your cost. Then the rest of it is profit, essentially, other than the cost of the app store itself, which is about 30%. Yeah. So you make an app, you sell it for, let's say you sell it for $1, just $1. Yeah. Imagine that. 30% of that will go to, say, Apple. So you'd get, say, 70 cents. But what if you sold 15 million of them? 20 million, 30 million. Yeah? If you sell a lot of them, then you're going to earn a lot of profit. So you're earning lots of profit from your business that would encourage you to use that profit to invest potentially in capital goods. Taxes on businesses. If it's really expensive to run your business because of taxation, then you're going to think twice about maybe using capital goods. No, I don't know. Probably not. It's too expensive. I don't have the money. I've got to pay these taxes. The revenue, again, it's that idea as to how much you're earning, right? Not profit as such. We're going to look at the difference, but how much you're earning from sales. So if you take the Apple iPhone as an example, right? Now, in fact, take the watch, the Apple Watch, okay? Apple earn more revenue from the sale of smartwatches than every other company combined, right? They earn more revenue from the sale of the Apple Watches than every single other business manufacturing smartwatches. And there are a few others out there. So that might encourage you as a business to then invest in capital goods. The next one, interest rates. Why interest rates? Because interest rates are going to be what you're charged if you borrow money. So if you're a business and you're thinking, I want to build a factory, it's going to cost me 5 million ringgit to build this factory. Yeah. Well, you don't have that in your pockets. Yeah? So you're going to need to go to the bank and ask them to borrow that much money. They're going to charge you interest rates, right, on that loan. So you're going to think, well, it's quite expensive because of the interest rate. Do I really need the new factory? Your confidence level. Like a lot of things in life, confidence helps sell things, yeah? Right? So if you are very confident that you're going to be able to sell all of your products, they're going to fly out the door, you're going to make all this money, then you're more likely to invest in the capital goods. And likewise here, technology. We know this, right? You deal with this all the time. You're currently dealing with technology, right? Sometimes technology goes and makes these big advances and big leaps, and therefore it becomes a whole lot cheaper, right? Therefore it becomes a whole lot better or more productive at what it was doing, and that might encourage you then to invest in more capital goods. Now, what's going to happen next? I'll show you the next bit. Okay. What time is it? I'm going to stop there. Right, we're going to stop here. Okay, because what I've done, one of the things I've done, I'm going to stop this one. All right. Right, and I'm going to do the share screen here. Because if I jump back into the classroom, this one. Now, update. I've posted a couple of things here. Now, this one is about costs. You don't need to worry about that yet because we haven't covered that yet. But this one here is about impact on business decisions. So this is what this one says here. This is going to look really familiar because it's what we've just covered. What happens if? What decisions regarding resources might be made? All right, so thinking about investing in capital goods. Should we invest in capital goods or not? So if the price of capital goods increases, what do you think should happen? If the price of labor increases, what do you think should happen? If profit levels are high, what do you think should happen? Corporate taxes are cut, they're reduced, decreased. What do you think should happen? If consumer income rises, interest rates reduce, confidence levels fall. What do you think is going to happen with regards to businesses and their decision about investing in capital goods? Now, I've set that for you as a wee task. So we've got a little bit of time left in the lesson. And what I thought would be good is for you to work your way through that one. All right? Try and have a complete sentence as opposed to bullet points. All right? The business will choose to increase investment in capital goods because. The business will choose to decrease investment in capital goods because. And link it to what you've been told. So link it to the idea about confidence levels. Link it as the cause to the idea about interest rates. Yeah, that's that showing you're able to fully explain, right? Which is quite an important skill, particularly when we're thinking about your paper 2. Now, I've asked the question. I haven't had a definite response yet, but please do be aware that time is marching on. We're now in the middle towards the end of the month of February, and I know we're doing this, but maybe next week we'll all be here, right? You never know, it could happen, right? But as time moves on, we get closer and closer to these dates that I have up on my board. And one of those dates is for what's called your mid-course exam. Now, obviously, everything's still a bit in flux at the moment, okay? But the suggested time at the moment is April. Now, April feels like a really long time away, but you've got to remember it's nearly March. All right, so that's 4 weeks to April. You've also got the April holidays to consider. All right, they're in there somewhere too. So there's something that you need to think about, right? Starting revisions, starting reviewing, going all the way back, looking at the previous work, making sure your notes are all there, working out the definitions, that you've got all of the terminologies, that you understand all of the definitions, that you've got everything written out. If you've got questions about different theories, how does the demand curve, what happens when it shifts this way, what happens in the market, what was that minimum price thing again, what was the maximum, how does that all work, elasticity, what, right? Starting to review those key concepts would be a good thing to be doing as well, all right? Looking up those sites, like the Tutor to You, the elearneconomics.com, and having a look and seeing what's there and what's helpful for you for your revision. Okay, please do consider that. I know your tutors are probably, maybe, right, starting to say, hey, look, exams are coming up. If they're not, they will be soon. And it's good practice to get yourself into building up like a revision schedule so that you're able to cover all of the topics that you need to cover within just, say, my subject, but also able to cover all of the other subjects and all of the topics in those subjects as well. Because I think you've got about 20 subjects that you take in year 10, I don't know, 9, 10, something along those sort of lines. So they're probably all going to have some form of exam, right? I'm working my way through figuring out what's going to be in your exam, so I'm kind of guess as to how far ahead, right, we can get to in order to get the questions set, right? I've got most of it set already, right? And then I'll be able to outline to you, you need to cover work from here to here, okay? This topic to this topic, okay? The paper will have this structure to it. Hopefully by then we will know the actual dates that you're sitting at, right? Whether it's morning and afternoon, all of those sorts of things, okay? So please do keep that in mind. But firstly, big task for today is to work your way through those decisions in that doc, right? And then submit that work. If there is work that I've been sending you back, you know, with feedback, that's great. You can look through that and maybe make some adjustments to it. If there's work you haven't yet completed that I've sent you a little wee reminder about to say, hey, look, the computer tells me you haven't done this yet, maybe have a go on that. All right? Please do keep working and ask any and all questions that you need. All right? But otherwise, we can actually finish the meet here and you can go and have a bit of a brain break, but do that work, have some lunch before your next session. All right? So we'll finish the meet here. If there's any questions that you have, you can ask. Otherwise, work, email me if you have any further questions. Otherwise,
Mr. David, what are corporate taxes?
Corporate taxes, really good question. Essentially, it's a tax on a business. So it's usually a tax on the profits a business earns. Right? And sometimes they can be quite high. They can get up to over 30%. Some of them 40, 50%.
It doesn't matter if it's using capital or labor, right?
It's, yeah, well, in the idea of the corporate tax question, that's about a cost to the business. So that is going to decrease their levels of profit they're able to earn, which suggests that then they might end up having to put off investment in capital goods because they don't have the money.
Yep. Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye. You too.